So the king of Wu thought about it and said, well, I have over 100 concubines. He's somewhat like King Solomon, wasn't he? And he said, all of these ladies of my royal court, if you can take these undisciplined ladies and turn them into an army of discipline within one day, then I will appoint you as my general. And Sun Tzu said to the king of Wu, he said, I will do it on one condition, and that is that I have absolute authority, and that my decision is binding. And he said, sure, you'll never be able to do it with my ladies, off you go. So he gathered the ladies, and the king had 2 favorite wives, so he divided them into 2 groups, and he took the favorite wife of the king, and he put her in charge of one group, and the second favorite he put in charge of another group. And then he said, now, you will give orders, but I don't give you orders by mouth. I give you orders by signs. I will use a drum. Now you must listen carefully, because this is an allegory. I will give you a drum. Now it works very simple. If the drum beats once, you will all, in harmony, turn to the right. If the drum beats twice, you will all, in harmony, turn to the left. If it beats 3 times, you will turn all the way around and face the other way. Do we all understand each other? Yes, we do. Giggle, giggle. He says, let's try it. So he beats the drum. Boom. And they go all over, giggling and laughing. He says, let's try that again. And he goes through the ritual. He beats the drum once, he beats the drum twice, he beats the drum 3 times, and there's total disarray and disharmony. So he says, perhaps I did not make myself clear. Let me explain this to you again. And he explains it meticulously in many, many forms so that they cannot possibly misunderstand it. And then he says, let's do it again. If the drum beats once, you turn to the right. All at the same time in harmony, etc. So he beats the drum. And they turn, and the one giggles, and the other one does this, and the other does this. Terrible disaster. Eventually he says, I don't think I've made myself clear. Let me explain this to you nicely again. So he goes through the whole process, explains it to them, asks them whether they all understand. They say, yes, they understand. And he goes through the same ritual with the same disastrous results. And then he says, fine. You know what you must do. You refuse to do it. And because you refuse to do it, that is insubordination. And the penalty for insubordination is death. And so, the 2 leading ladies, will you come forward? Because you are now going to suffer the death penalty. And some people see that he's serious. So they run to the king of Wu, and they say, King Wu, he's going to kill your wives. So he sends an order. This is the king of Wu. He sends an order. You will not touch my favorite wives. You will not do it. And Sun Tzu says, I have been given absolute authority. And he takes his sword and he chops both of their heads off. And he has them taken away. And he chooses 2 ladies out of each group and say, you come stand in the front here, and you're going to stand in front of this group. Now let me explain the ritual to you again. And he explains it to them perfectly. And then he says, when the drum beats once, you'll turn to the right. If it beats twice, you would turn to the left. If it turns 3 times, you turn all the way around. You understand? And he says, let's try that. Boom. What do you think happened? Absolute, perfect obedience. And he went through the ritual, and the king was devastated. His favorite wives were dead. So he decided to ban Sun Tzu and told him, go away, I don't want you. Eventually, the situation became so bad in his kingdom that he had no choice. And so he summoned Sun Tzu to come and take over the generalship of his nation. And the general became world famous. And he conquered all those lands back and gave them all back to the king of Wu. What are we talking about here? We're talking about Catholicism and Protestantism. We're talking about the king of Wu, who happens to be the Pope. And we're talking about Sun Tzu, who happens to be the general, with absolute authority. Now let's have a look at what his strategy would be in the art of war.